This video will not be monetized, so I'm asking everybody to donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App so I can continue making content. And I want to thank you for your support.
Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere.
I got a comment from a viewer regarding my video where I discussed the beta male, Jeffrey or James Spade, depending on the news report, who murdered his neighbors, the Goys, over snow that had been shoveled onto his property. Now, according to this individual, James or Jeffrey Spade had a dispute with his neighbors for years, and this was the reason why he went out here and murdered his two neighbors. Now, when I took a critical examination of this incident, I clearly saw a beta male in crisis, but now I also see an individual who really did not understand he had the ability to take the power as related to this situation. Now, when I was a preteen and a teenager, I was bullied in junior high school and high school. And one of the lessons that I learned when my mother took me out of a toxic environment like Park West High School and transferred me over to Taft High School was that if a situation is getting way too out of control, you can leave that situation and leave those toxic people behind. Unfortunately, one of the big problems that a lot of beta males have is they're always trying to make something work when it's just not workable. And when I look at your James or Jeffrey Spade, he was following the classic beta male pattern that I almost tried to follow and trying to make this untenable situation with these neighbors work. But when something isn't working, sometimes you just have to take that loss and move on. That's the lesson again that I learned back in 1990 when my mother transferred me from one high school to another when I was being harassed by these black males in Park West High School. And that's a lesson that every other man out here has to learn early on, that if something isn't working and you're dealing with toxic people who don't respect you and don't respect your rights, you have to take your power and walk away from these individuals. So the only thing you can do is leave, and you might not want to leave because back in 1990, I didn't want to leave Park West. I wanted to try to make things work. I wanted to try to follow the prescribed patterns as related to high school, but the whole thing was I was praying to God to change my life, and this was how He wanted to change it. And many of these guys out here, what they want to do is try to hold on to these patterns because they're comfortable and convenient, and what they do is impede their own growth. Now, these toxic individuals and their juvenile behavior, the Goys, this was something that was going on for years, and it didn't have to go on. All it took was this guy taking his power away by saying, hey, I'm not going to put up with these juvenile neighbors. I've got this property, I've got a good job, I've got good money. What I'm going to do is go and look for a new residence, and then I'm going to put this house up for sale, and I'm going to call it a day. That's what a critical thinking man would do as related to dealing with toxic neighbors who are extremely juvenile and immature and participating in junior high school behavior. He's going to understand that he has a lot of things to lose getting involved with these types of individuals, and he's going to say, look, I'm just going to cut my losses as related to this property. Yes, it's probably a neighborhood I like living in. It's a neighborhood I'm probably comfortable in, but I would rather sacrifice a little comfort in order to be able to move my life forward and really go to a place where I can keep my intangibles of manhood, like my respect, like my dignity, and my self worth, because these things are more important to me than being in a residence where I can practically know where everything is. I would rather move to another neighborhood and keep my intangibles of manhood, because I can always find security and safety and comfort in another neighborhood. And I can also maintain my peace of mind by going to that other neighborhood, because it's just not worth having the anxiety every day, being on pins and needles, worrying about what this other person is going to do. And it's not worth the stress of having to look over your shoulder almost every day, wondering when somebody is going to start with you. I mean, I dealt with that in junior high school and high school, and I can tell you it's just not worth it as a kid. And when you become an adult and you go out here and work to build your own life, you don't want to be dealing with this type of BS when you're a grown man going back and forth with one of these dysfunctional adults, or going to have to worry and look over your shoulder over a property that you own. I mean, this is property you own, and you're worried about this guy wanting to start with you. That's absolutely ridiculous. And a grown man is not going to sit there and want to stay in that type of environment for years. No, if he's making good money and he has a good job and he owns his own home, no, what he's going to do is say, look, I see these individuals over here are being very dysfunctional. I see these individuals are extremely juvenile. And if this is the type of quality of life that is a part of this neighborhood, then it's time for me to walk away from this neighborhood, walk away from this house, and then walk into another community where people will show me the respect that I deserve. That's what a man is going to say when he sees juvenile neighbors who do things like be out here playing radios super loud, and then after you ask them to stop, they keep doing it, or doing things just to needle and harass you. They're going to take their personal power back by saying that I have the economic power to buy this home, and I have the economic power to sell this home. And now that I have this power, I can choose where I want to go, and I'm going to choose to go someplace where I can get my respect and I can have my peace of mind. That's what a critical thinking man is going to do. Unfortunately, a beta male, what he's going to try to do is fall back into the codependent patterns he learned when he was younger. And in those codependent patterns, he has learned how to endure and tolerate toxic people, but he doesn't understand that adults don't tolerate and endure toxic people. No, healthy adults, they walk away from toxic people, and when they see toxic people acting a fool, what they do is they look at these people, they put a period at the end of things, and then they move on. They realize that if this person is acting like this reflects badly on them and not on you. And what you are doing is you are out here, when you feel this way, this is something in your senses telling you something is wrong, and something is wrong with this individual. And if this person, after you've made efforts to try to reason with them, does not continue to respect your space, remember, you have the power to choose your space. And when you are paying money for a said space, you have the power to leave that space and go to a space where you will get your respect and you will have your peace of mind. That's what a man does. He's like, I'm not getting into it with this guy, going back and forth with him. I'm not going into these juvenile behaviors if this is the standard as related to this neighborhood, I'm just going to walk away from this neighborhood and I'm going to go take myself to another place and I'm just going to enjoy my life because the quality of my life is based on where I go, and I'm not going to put up with going into it with some juvenile people who are not going to change, and I'm going to leave them for the next person to deal with because I guarantee you, if they try that with somebody else, they will probably get a different response. But the whole thing is, it's not about me getting to the point where I get so upset that I'm thinking about putting my own life at risk or risking important intangibles like my freedom. Because when I look at this James or Jeffrey Spade, he did what a lot of people who are bullied do, and I know where that is, where you get to that bottom point and you start to think about either hurting yourself or hurting others, or you get to that nothing to lose point where you want to just destroy everything around you. And that's a point that a lot of beta males in crisis get to because there's nobody there to intervene on their behalf or anybody to pull them to the side and say, look, this is the solution to this. And it may be a painful solution, but it's less painful than you going out here and murdering these toxic juvenile individuals and sacrificing your freedom or feeling so worthless that you want to take your own life. When it comes down to these types of people, what you do is you have to leave them to themselves and you have to let them go, because once you let them go, your life is going to get a lot better. And the whole thing is, your life, it should not be revolving around having to feud with some juvenile people as an adult. As a 47-year-old man myself, I'm not going to sit here and be feuding with some other individual over some foolishness. No, I would just rather leave that toxic individual right where they are and let them continue to be toxic, continue to be dysfunctional, because that's not worth sacrificing my mental health or sacrificing my emotional health for these people and allowing these people to have that kind of power over me. That's the way I see it. I mean, if you allow these type of people to take power, they practically will be running your life, and they'll have you sitting up here scared of them. And these people think, oh, you moving away is running away. No, you moving away is walking away, because you have identified a toxic situation. And once you identify a toxic situation, you just respond by leaving the toxic situation. Because another mistake a lot of beta males make is trying to make toxic situations work, and you can't make a toxic situation work because the toxic people around you don't want to make it work. They want to gain power over you, and they want to foster a codependent relationship with you where they keep having you go back and forth with them, and they want to play this game of victim and abuser with you, and they can only play that game if you allow them to play that game. But that's a game you're going to lose every time, and I know this from personal experience. You're just going to lose. But the best way to beat that game is taking the short loss in order to get the long gain. If you walk away, yeah, you're going to take a short loss, but in the long-term aspect of your life, you're going to make a large gain as related to your overall life situation, because your quality of life is going to get better. Because when I changed high schools from Park West to Taft, my quality of life got better. I didn't have to deal with toxic people always harassing me about having a girlfriend. I didn't have to deal with toxic people wanting to get into my business. And I could focus on my work, and I got on the honor roll within the first semester of being there. And I went on to graduate from high school, went on to college, graduated at the top of my class in college, and I managed to move on with my life. And that's something that can happen for anybody out here. You can move on with your life and have a better quality of life if you leave toxic people alone. And because once you identify toxic people and you walk away from these toxic people, you can go from being a man who's in crisis or on the brink of a crisis to being a man who's living an abundant life, the kind of life that God wants us all to live. And you can go on to be out here and be thriving and growing because you won't have these people out here impeding your personal growth. And that's something this guy, sadly, he never got the message on. He never had anybody, as I see it, sit down and talk to him. And maybe if somebody had talked to him, they would have not only prevented him from murdering these people who didn't value his life, it would have allowed him to see the value in his own life. Because I remember being a kid back in 1990 and feeling that bad at one time. But thank God I had a mother who looked out for me and saw that this situation wasn't going to change and that these toxic people weren't going to change. And that was the way God blessed me to change my life and be able to walk away from that situation. Because when you're dealing with people, grown men, who are trying to do this bullying and juvenile stuff, the only thing you can do in those cases is take that short-term L to get to the long-term W. And you might not like moving away from said person, but sometimes you gotta move away in order to move on with your life. Now, if you want to learn more about the dysfunctional behaviors of beta males and why they wind up in these codependent situations, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April.